showed you a film, but we couldn't get a projector, video and stuff.
I am gonna look into seeing if we can get it in the film room later. I'll let Mr. Winburn know, and we'll make an announcement. I did have a couple questions, if you don't mind me starting, and then we'll go to the fans, and there'll be better questions than mine. So, just a very general, generic question. Obviously, very extensive career in the film and television industry. How did you decide on stunt work, and did you get formal training?
Yes, on both.
Okay.
Where do I start? I was a little boy in Kentucky on a farm. And my granddad was a big farm in Waco, Kentucky, outside of Richmond. And we used to go to the movies and see, when I was growing up. And we would see Abbott and Costello, and we would see all these serials that they played at theaters, local theater in Richmond. And my sister and I decided that we were going to be an entertainer.
That's cool.
Even though, when we go back to the farm, we would dance and sing and do all kinds of goofy things to entertain ourselves. You know how families are, they think we were real cute and good, which we were bad. And then we moved to Cincinnati. And my dad had a company over there, and so I was going to the Catholic school, and being a Baptist is not a good thing to be at a Catholic school. And they had a music department. So I got involved with the music department, and the guy said, "You ever thought about dancing?" And I said, "Sure, I thought a lot about dancing." So anyway, from there, I started sneaking in down on the river in Ohio, where all the bars and clubs were at, and Showtime, and all. My sister and I, we used to sneak in and watch all the acts on stage and watch their routines and all the stuff that was going on. Now this is 1943 in that area. So my mom said that we're going to California.
Wow.
And I said, "Why are we going to California?" They said, because my dad got tired of Cincinnati and Kentucky and the farm life and all that stuff. And there was better opportunities in California. And my dad was a cripple. He got hurt on the farm when he was a teenager, and he couldn't, it was very hard on him because he couldn't be normal with everything. So anyway, we went to California, and we lived in Glendale, California. And the first job I got was at the Griffith Park studio, horse studio, where all the writers and actors would come and practice their writing and go up into Griffith Park and all that stuff. Well, across the road was the Sun and Pioneer Club, which was Roy Rogers and all the cowboys hung out, and they would sing and dance and play pool and all that stuff. So I would hang out there for lunch, and then I'd go back to work or back to school, whatever the subject, and then we moved to Baldwin Park. When we got to Baldwin Park, I was breaking horses, and this one horse landed on me and broke my foot. So when the mother laid the law down to me, and my dad was very upset. He said, "You will not ride any more horses. You won't do any of this stuff until you graduate from high school. And when you graduate from high school, you can do any damn thing you want." And so my mom said, "By the way, when you finish and your foot gets healed and everything, you're going to start taking dancing lessons." So after my foot got healed, I started taking dancing lessons. Well, what happened, and after a lot of stuff in between, I went in the National Guard, in the Air Force, and got out in 57, and I played in clubs in Okinawa and all that when I wasn't doing my job with General Hips as a bodyguard. And so I was kind of ruling all that. But anyway, when we came back to California, and I was going to PCC college and entertainment and all that. And I had an offer, and in that offer gave me the opportunity to be an actor, which I didn't care to be an actor. I want to be an entertainer, which is different. Okay? And I love stage, and I love live audience, and I love all that stuff. So what happened, I was put under contract at Universal Tours doing the Wild West comedy show, and I played the comedian. In that show, allowed me to meet all the people in the lower lot who was casting and doing all that stuff. And the next thing I knew, I was watching people doing stunts and this and that, and I started training. And that's how I got into stunt. But what really was interesting, stunt was only a part of what I really was. But being a dancer allowed me to, and I wasn't a real good dancer, but I was a physical dancer, allowed me to do things that a normal dancer wouldn't want to do when they're doing ballroom dancing. And for example, years later, I was called to CBS, and on CBS was a show that was going to be started, and they wanted a double for the main actor. And so I went inside and met everybody, and then they introduced me to the actor, and it was Barry Boswick. And Barry said, "You dance?" And I said, "Well, vaguely." And he said, "Can you do this?" So they played the music, and he did these steps, and I watched, and then they played the music, and I did those steps. Not as good as him, but you know. And he said, "Well, can you do this?" And he do it, and then I did it. Then he said, "Can you do this?" And I said, "Yeah." So I do it as best I could. Then I said, "Barry, can you do this?" And he looked at me, and I did the step, and I flipped off the wall, and I went like that. He said, "You got the job." So that's, for the next 11 years, I doubled Barry Boswick on all his films, the dance, the stage shows, all the heavy stuff. And we're good friends today. We don't see much each other, but we're still really good friends. He was a tremendous writer, and a tremendous actor, and a singer, and everything. And he taught me a lot, movements and stuff, so I could portray him. Because in Paramount, Paramount didn't want him to get hurt one iota. So anything that came to look like it was going to be dangerous or hurt, I did it. Because I was a good photo double for him too at the time. Not today, I'm much more handsome. But the question is that for 11 years I had him, and the last show I did was a Disney show a number of years ago. And it wasn't much, but it was nice, and that was the last time I worked together, all the years that we were together. But I did a lot more. I was 6 years with Peter O'Toole, all over Europe, and playing all those parts, and doubling here in the United States. And there were so many top actors. Knight Rider, I did all the Knight Rider's fights and high stuff. I didn't drive the car. I did all the trick, physical stuff for him for 25 episodes. And it goes on to the stuff. But the big thing that it comes down to, I never was finished stunt person or actor. I was learning every time I went on a new show. New things, new systems, new airbags, from porta pits to this and tumbling and this. And so it was a training process for a lot of years because I worked out all the time. And fencing, I did a lot of fencing for different shows. I have the guy who trained Earl Flynn. I worked with him all the time. He gave me all Earl Flynn's fencing swords. I have them on my wall at my ranch. And so all this stuff was great for me because it was a learning process at the same time. And it was constantly educational because of the system, the people I was doubling, the way they walk. I would watch a guy walk and talk and do and how he drank and all that. So when I did a stunt, I looked like him physically. And that's what made me successful in the industry, because I just didn't do the stunt, I was him, that person. And that's why the directors liked me and the producers liked me. I did over 400 films and TV shows and episodes, and I did Tecumseh, Blue Jacket, Daniel Boone, Knight Rider, not Knight Rider, but A-team shows all over the world as a director and producer and casting and all that. So in China, I worked with the Chinese productions in showing American history, teaching the Chinese, which is a bad thing, because everything you train them, the communist supervisor would tear it back because they didn't want them to know safety. And I teach safety. And it was a very hard program for 6 or 7 months over there. And big combat battle scenes, working with all the people and teaching them safety and the proper equipment, and so the people can. Then you find out that all the extras are military people, because they ain't got nothing else to do with it. But it's been an education for me all the way up to where I'm sitting today. Ta-da!
I'm going to combine a couple questions I had, because I think they go hand in hand, especially after getting the opportunity to talk to you in the car the other night. Obviously, I think a lot of people here want to hear about your work on Halloween and the scenes you're in, but also, if you don't mind, my opinion, Deborah Hill was a major force in the horror community and not talked about enough. So maybe while talking about Halloween, you can also tell us about your relationship with her and her influence on the film.
Well, first of all, to talk about Deborah Hill is very close. We were great friends. Excuse me. She graduated from college and film school, and she came to California. And being in California in the film industry at that time, when she came in, was a good old boys club. They wouldn't allow women to be writers. They wouldn't allow women to be producers. They wouldn't allow women to be directors. They wouldn't allow anything. You stay in wardrobe and makeup, period. Here was a talented woman that couldn't buy a job in Hollywood. So the only job she got was working with Dean Cunny, the camera operator, and the DP, who had his own company going at that time, that was doing mature films. I won't say what kind of film, but mature. And she was the wardrobe, makeup, production, and stuff like that. I got to meet her on Don Edmonds' show when Don called me and asked me to coordinate and do second unit directing on a lot of action shows. And Dean Cunny was the camera person on this, with his crew. And they were all non-union. They were SAG actors, but non-union crew. And these were independent shows, not studio shows, but independent. So I met her. So when I would take out the second unit to do action, she was my AD. And we became great friends. And we would talk hours and talk about production and this and that. And she was learning and I was learning from her, because she was a very talented woman. So anyway, this went on for 5 or 6 films that we did. And then I went other places, and she got involved with John Carpenter. And they wrote the script Halloween. Now Nick Castle graduated with John Carpenter at his film school. So they were very close friends. So Castle was a great writer and a director himself, which he did The Last Starfighter film. So he was working with John to produce this, not produce this film, but do this film, Halloween. And this was the film that would allow Deborah Hill as a producer, writer, and a production person to step out into the Hollywood scene of filmmaking. And so I was working under contract at Warner Brothers doing police story and doubling, playing a cop and doing a lot of hot car driving and all that stuff. And she called me and asked me if I would come to Orange Grove Avenue, where they were filming it. And I said, well, if I can get off, I'll compete there, but I don't know what time we're gonna get off. So I went and asked the coordinator, and he got upset with me because you don't ask the coordinator, can I get off so I can go to another film? And it just happened that the production wrapped early to move to another spot where they didn't need stunt people, they only need the main actors, because that's the only time they could film it. So, playing the Lone Ranger music, I got in my 4x4 and hauled guns over from Los Angeles all the way over to Hollywood in Beverly Hills to Orange Grove Avenue, and I pulled up and I went up the driveway of the house, and there was the executive producers and distributors of the film at the coffee place. And then they came out of the house. Deborah introduced me to John. There was Don Barron, the production manager, and everybody. And I knew everybody except John. I didn't know John. So John said, grabbed me by the hand and said, wherever I go, I want to go. I said, if you go to the bathroom, I'm not going with you. And, you know, because I wanted to know that I have a little humor, right? And he laughed, and we became great friends from that moment on. So anyway, we went upstairs, and I met Tony Moran, and Tony was there because they wanted a real young face when they pulled the mask off. Now, Tommy Lee Wallace was the production designer and prop. He was the all-around cowboy on that show. He was the editor, and he was the one that most of the time, when Nick Castle was there, he had the mask on. And he did that, a lot of scenes. So he was the real Michael Myers, and then I would put Nick Castle after him, but they put Nick Castle as whatever. But anyway, they were good, and so I was brought in for liability. It was a $300,000 film, and it was a non-union crew with actors. Tony Moran didn't have a Screen Actor Guild card, so he was working that show. He had to work 3 days in order for Screen Actor Guild to give him into the union, that he worked a union show. So that's why he was there. And Deborah Hill knew his sister, who was working on Happy Days. And she said, great, get him in, you know, and all that. So then we went out and looked at the balcony and all the stuff that John wanted to do. And it was getting late in the evening, and we discussed the character of Michael Myers, the way with Deborah Hill and John. But when you're talking to Deborah Hill, you have a character that she designed. But when you talk to the character with John Carpenter, it's what he's shooting in the individual in real life time. And sometimes you can't take the two and bounce them and make them even. So I'm going like this, you know, listen to both of them and trying to figure out. So he said, when you do the fall, when we get around to do it, I want Michael Myers in the air. I don't want a real wild and crazy stunt like you see a lot of stunt guys do. I want the character to continue on to the ground. And okay. So we arranged everything around, and I called, and a friend of mine brought my porter pits over, and then they were shooting the interior shot of the closet, where she was in the closet, and Tommy Lee Wallace was playing Michael Myers. And so they finished shooting that stuff, and then they came out, and I said, Tony Moran took the shot. They set up the cameras for Tony, take the shot to go through the door out to the patio roof. And Dean Cunny said, why don't we use Jim to do it? Because we looked like Mutt and Jeff when we stand together. I was real tall and he was real short. So in order for continuity and editorial, what they did when they cut the and stuff, they wanted to see which is best for equalization on the film. So I did the same, everything that Tony Moran did when I was there, I did the overlap of the same stuff. So then we got to my part, because it was getting late, and they have a curfew in Beverly Hills, no filming after 10 o'clock. No vehicles on the street, no lamps on the yard. You can shoot inside, but you can't outside. So we were breaking down, so we put the pads up, and I said, oh, by the way, do you have any coffee cups? Everybody started laughing. And he said, well, you drinking coffee? I said, no, I want coffee cups. So I said, bring all the old coffee cups to new cups. So I put them up, and then I put the porter pit on top. The porter pit was 5 foot wide by 9 feet. And it was 18 inches thick. And we put the camera right at the edge of the pad, facing upward where I was going to come off the thing. And the reason I put coffee cups underneath the pad, the pressure and the air would go out, and I would go below camera, and I wouldn't bounce back up and destroy the shot. And that's why the coffee cups were put in there. Everybody laughed about it, but that's the reason why. And so we had 2 cameras upstairs and 1 downstairs, and I went through the door and hit my box and went through the thing, and I did the fall and tried the best of what John wanted me to do. And then they came and said to wrap. I laid on the ground, they shot it from up here, you know, and we got all that, and then we wrapped and went inside. And then I did a few more things inside that John wanted me to do, and then I had to go because it was getting early in the morning, and I had to go to work at Police Story down in Los Angeles. And so I jumped in my 4x4 and put the pads on my back of the truck and gone. And it's just another film to me. And it was just doing it for a friend, a great friend of mine for all these years, until she passed away. And bless her heart. But anyway, she was a hell of a woman. And I loved her dearly as a friend. And she loved my kids. She used to play with my kids and all that. So I used to bring them on the set every once in a while when I would, and up there in different areas and stuff. But she was a great lady, and she opened up the industry. She got awards after awards once they saw her talent and what she could do. She opened up the door for a lot of women to become directors, producers, writers in the industry. And you look at today, you see some of the ladies are unbelievable in the characters that they do, other than being an actress. So that's the little gel of my life with her and Halloween. But I have to tell you, Halloween was just another film to me. I've done so many of the horror films, and I have to tell you, I've never seen the full movie. None of them. Even with Rob Zombie, when he called me to come to the premiere, I got up and walked out. Because when they were killing the security guard, they were playing music after music after music after music. I said, what the heck? This was a musical, so I got up and left. And Rod said, where are you going? I said, I come to see a show. I didn't come to see a musical. Well, the music was because he's a big seller in Europe. He's on his band and his music. And he wanted me to be in the next movie because I said, call me and if I'm available, but I'm leaving for overseas. So we were friends, but I never worked for Rob. I never did. Tyler Man was good for him. You know, and Tyler is a nice man. And we had we had a conversation in, I forgot what show it was, back in Baltimore. It was one of these real spooky shows. It wasn't Halloween, about ghosts and weird things. And all these people were, they talked to spirits and stuff. That's what it was all about. So Tyler Mann and I was brought in, and we had a conversation between the two of us, which they videoed it. And I think it's on YouTube. And Tyler Mann, we had a lot of fun talking to him, because he got real spooky, you know. And Tyler had great humor, but he was a good stunt guy for what he did. But he wanted to be a producer director in heart. Ta-da!
I have plenty of questions I could go on with, but why don't we just, so we don't run out of time, maybe
Sure.
the audience asks some questions, and I'm sure they'll touch on what I have on this paper anyway. Anybody like to ask some questions? So you look like you want to ask a question.
Actually, the one that I did want to ask was, and I know you said you was like performing and entertaining. Was there a goal that you ever tried to go back to get back on track with that, or you just stayed doing the stunts and everything because you just loved doing it?
First of all, I'm an entertainer. I've always been an entertainer.
Yes, sir.
I don't consider myself a stunt person, even though I'm in the Stunt Association all these years. I'm a lifetime member. You know, I got all kinds of awards, you know, for doing goofy things. But I'm an entertainer, stage and film, and I merged them together. And I look at myself with all the stuff and all the shows that I've done, over 400 stunt shows all over the world. A large portion. For example, the Gong Show. I did 100 of them. But I did 25 in front of camera. But the others was working with all the independent acts that were going to be filmed in his show. Because some of them were very nasty and very violent. And I had to get them out of those habits to make the show, because they know they're going to be gone. In certain shows, I mean, it's a little rigged, but that's the way life is. But I did 100 of those because he had two networks. One was NBC, the other one was ABC. One was in daytime, the other one was at nighttime. One was one night a week, the other one was every day. That's why I worked so many shows, because there were so many people auditioning to get parts on the Gong Show. Then we did the Gong Show movie. I was the stunt coordinator, and I did the, I don't know if you saw Gong Show, in the hospital. He runs into a guy with cripples and knocks him down against the wall, and he goes down the hallway and crashes into the medical bus. And he doesn't look back or anything, he just keeps on going. That's me. And stuff like that. And then when we went up and did the outdoor stuff up in Santa Barbara, I did all the working with all the directors and all the stuff we did up there. So I consider myself an entertainer. And the stunts was a mean to support my family. But then suddenly, everybody was hiring me as a stunt coordinator and a stuntman and double, Barry Botchwick and all these other guys who were skinny and tall. And you know, and I went all over the world doing that. And in the live, but working the live shows, they were the greatest thing. I had so much, and I have to say that when I did the A-Team show, I had some of the greatest guys, and every one of them today that I cast in that show are the top stunt people in the business today. The guys I did in the Batman show for Six Flags all over the United States, I've done about 12, 15 of those, directing them, putting them together, hard overseas and all that stuff. A large portion of those people I cast in those parts of the Batman show, there's 5 of them in the Stuntman Association. There's 4 of them in Stunts Unlimited and a whole bunch of independent. Because they learn, they listen of what to entertain and how to project yourself to the industry. Because it's business. Everything's business. Did I lose concentration here?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Yes.
Are you a horror movie fan, and do you have a favorite horror movie?
Do I have a favorite horror movie?
Yes.
Let's see, how about Joe Biden? Is that a little political?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Let's see. One of the movies that I did, one of the guys came up today and had a poster. It was a Canadian film, and I'm sorry that I forgot the name of it, but anyway, I doubled the lead in it because it was a monster picture of entertainment on stage. That's why they hired me. And to coordinate and do all the stuff with the dancers and all that stuff and the horror presentation. We shot it in Jamaica, and they originally were shooting it in California, and then they shut production down because they fired the director. So the Canadians didn't want to shoot it in California anymore, and they wanted more international, so they shot it in Jamaica. So they had cast me to go over there. I liked that show because there was dancers, I hate to say this again, but it was entertaining on the stage, and then I became the monster on the stage, doubling the major actor with them on, doing the swings and the dance and all that stuff. That was fun. On Halloween was a good film. I don't put anything back. I just went in, did the stunt, and went home, basically. I did it for a friend, and all the friends that worked on there, Dean Gunny and all those guys. And I wasn't that involved with the production. I just came in to do the job. But with this show in Jamaica, I was involved.
Yeah.
And when you get involved, I went and watched the dailies, and I did this to see what I did wrong or what I did right, so I could continue on to make the director and the producers and people in Canada who were producing it enjoy it. And so I would say that show, and I wish I could remember the name of that show. I've done so many shows, they go through my head like a zip. But it was the first time in any place I've been at to sign autographs, a guy came up with that poster.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And it just took back a lot of memories. And but that was a show that I really enjoyed because I was involved.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Anybody else?
as Barbara would say.
I had a question for you. Jim, do you find that when you work with low budget pictures, they're more, I mean, obviously it's a job, but do you think they're more enjoyable than working for a big budget production?
It depends on what the film is about. If it's a dramatic where it's just a conversation, talk,
Right.
Camera angles and then. It depends on the script and the people that's doing it and how they're shooting it. Then on the major stuff, on independents, a lot of independents have to take shortcuts because they don't have the money to do the big time stuff. So they try to cheat to make it look like they're doing something. But on the major film, you have the writers, all the production people, all this stuff, all cramming the director on like each King Tut.
Right.
You got all the control. And so they're different. Independent films, I've directed 4 independent films. And I've directed 6 other films where they fired the director and I finished the film for them.
Wow.
Because I wasn't in the director guild, I got the money, but I didn't get the credit. Because under DGA, you have to be, if you sign a contract, his name's gotta be on the title, even though he gets fired. So, I finished up 2, 3, 4 weeks of the film when they got rid of the director for whatever reason. And and 3 of them were horror movies. The rest of them were action movies, helicopters and stuff like that, war movies, and those you're out in the woolies and with all the equipment and all that stuff, you know. And it's a lot different when you shoot in town where you're close knit and
Right.
you got traffic and people and everybody's watching and you know, and you're gonna wreck a car and turn it over in the middle of the street, and you got all the homeless and all that. It's just amazing, the information, you know.
Right.
But to get back to what you asked, it's a lot different in the way. It depends on the executive producer, how much money they got. It all comes down to money, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I did films. They brought me in because they paid millions of dollars out to do this film, and they went over budget and they lost everything. But they need 2 weeks of pickup shots to make the film work. So they would bring me in, and I would shoot those 2 weeks in order to make the film. Those films, I got credited as a coordinator or something like that, but not as the director, because it was GGA. And I turned down GGA so many times, they quit calling me, because I didn't want to be part of GGA. And I wanted to be freelancing the way I was, because I was traveling all over the world, doing things that most guys wouldn't do. And I had a great experience in China, Italy, Germany, Russia, German, you know, Australia, Argentina, all those places I worked, you know, doing things down on the Berlin line. You ought
Excellent.
to do that someday. To get through the lines with the Russians and try to shoot it. And, it was interesting. Then I did a musical show in France and Under the Tower, and it was based on the movie New York, New York. And I did all the dance routines and the action for a week for the French. But I was working in Italy and on the cop show, and they asked me if I could come up for a week. So the producer allowed me to go up there for a week. So I did that, and then I went back to Italy and finished up the show down there.
Excellent.
So it's been a hell of a career for me.
Yeah.
And
Right on.
I learned, every day was a learning process.
Mhm.
I never stopped learning. And I always gave everybody the great credit because they got a part, they got this, they were the production people, whatever, they were on the show. I never tried to make anything worse than what the producers wanted, you know. That's why I had a successful business. And I have to tell you this, I was trained by the world's finest stunt people that you saw in hundreds of movies on television, from 1948, 1950s, westerns and all that stuff. If you go on my website, jamespwinburn.com, and look at the tribute to, and look at all those guys, they're over 60. Every one of those is a part of my life. They gave me certain talent of doing things, and they gave me work. They called the producer and said, put him as a coordinator. They could got the job, but they turned the job down so I could have it. So I would bring him in as a, you know, to play the parts or whatever it was. But if you go on my website, you'll see all the guys and some other stuff. There's a lot of garbage on it, of entertainment stuff. But you'll see all the people that had some part of my life to where I am today. And, you know, I just turned 86. And all these guys are gone except a few.
Right.
And it just amazes me that the talent that they had, that they gave up that moment to give me that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way the industry was.
That's outstanding.
You
Good.
know?
So we're probably gonna have to wrap up in a moment. I just want to ask one quick question.
Sure.
Probably a dumb one, but
I don't
most
know.
of us, if we had to fall off the balcony today onto that pit, would be scared. What does a trained stuntman, do you still have a level of fear, or is the confidence such that it's just another day at the office?
Yes,
Okay.
you have to have some type of information going into your system. What will go wrong? How do I get out if something goes wrong? I'll give you an example. I got a lot of, but I'll give you the- I was doing a show and up in the lake area of Los Angeles, well, on a helicopter. It was a helicopter. It was a pilot show from Columbia, and which never went anywhere. And it was action oriented. And we were in a helicopter fighting. The idea was after we cooled the bad guys in the helicopter, we would go out of the helicopter into the lake. Well, then we had a camera, another second helicopter, which was a camera helicopter, but was dressed up like a police helicopter. So the idea was they were shooting us as the other stunt guy and myself would go out of the helicopter into the lake. Well, something happened, and Jackie Cooper, the actor, the kid actor many years ago, back in the 40s, he was directing. He knows nothing about directing. He's an actor. Somehow he got the job. So anyway, we had to stop the shoot because they were having problems with him. So we were hovering, and I was talking to the new director that's coming in to take over the show, and he said, "We got to make it more entertainment, more of this." So I said, "Well, that's a police helicopter, and your guy is in the scene, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't we do this? As I go out, I'll go to the next helicopter and get the skids, and you can shoot it from that helicopter." I love it. Now, here we're sitting idling, right? And if you've ever been in a helicopter, you don't idle because you lose pressure. So you go up, and then if you want to accelerate out, it coughs, and you start losing. Well, anyway, Ringo, the pilot, kept getting higher and higher to keep, so we went from 40 feet to 140 feet, basically. And we're up here, and we're getting ready, and he said, "Action, action!" So I went out, and as I went out to grab, and the helicopter, he went this way, this helicopter went that way, and as I drove out, I was going to grab the squib. I had a hook on my arm. So as soon as I grabbed, the hook came on and locked me into so I wouldn't fall. Well, I missed the hook, and I fell 160 feet into the water. Because we're only supposed to be 40 or 50 feet above the water. But due to the helicopter and idling and all that, they got it all on film. They loved it. And I was hurting.
Yes.
Because I had to go like a ball, and as soon as I hit, I had to spread. But I didn't know how deep it was in there. Unfortunately, it was about, 20 feet deep if it was that. But I went all the way down. But they loved it, and I said, "Well, it's a print. I don't want to do that again." No, but it was something that I never feared. In the military, I never feared all the stuff I did in the military. Because life dictates certain things to you. And being trained in the Air Force, I was a bodyguard for General Hibbs. We traveled all over the world at that time, and back in 1955, 56, 57, before I went to Luke Air Base. And we traveled all over for security, and I was one of the security guys. And there was another group that really were the bad guys. I protect the general and the package. The package was the security stuff. And so I learned not to fear with all the different countries I was in and all the different, we had a lot of rehearsals. And a lot of martial art guys would come in and try to take the package and we would have to fight them. So we learned a lot of stuff through the military, and these would be rangers or whatever they were, and trying to do secret stuff. And so we were working out all the time. But I learned not to fear, because if I know the job, I know there's an exit. So I always try to find the exit. And I always protected the individual if it was an atmosphere person involved, actors, camera crew, all the people, that the vehicle or the MC would not hit them. It would hit me first before it hit them. And so I've never had that scare fright that a lot of people have. I think it's eating good candy.
Well, thank you for taking the time today, and thank you for entertaining us all these years.
It's over with? I just started.
Keep going, Jim.
We can find another room for us. They've got reserved after us, but I could listen to you all day.
Well, just remember one thing. Do the best you can, because life is good.
Right on.
Of course, Jim will be at his table the rest of today and tomorrow, and he does have a photo op if